colleagues, and welcome to our annual general meeting of the Museums Association of the Caribbean. My name is Shani Rupo. I'm co-president along with Elena Strong, and we were re-elected to serve as presidents. I've been an institutional board member representing the University of the West Indies for the past 4 years, and it's been an honor to serve on the board of directors as co-president. Like all of our sessions at the conference, we've provided simultaneous interpretation. Most of the speakers here will be speaking in English, so please feel free to make use of the services that we've provided. So we will all tag team to provide a report on various aspects of the operational year, right? So the effective running of the organization depends on dedicated volunteers willing to give their time and effort to ensure the success of this organization. Our board of directors is a working board, and a working board combines the association's governing responsibilities as well as implementing programs and acting as staff, especially as we've had to do over the last year. And it's been a pleasure to serve on this dynamic team that has worked to help us achieve our goals during the course of the operational year. So today we have 7 board members with us, and they will introduce themselves quickly. And before they do, missing is Dr. Katarina Jacobson, who's our vice president from Guadeloupe, Ina Jimo, right, who's our vice secretary in Martinique, Tasha Duguay, he represents Haiti and US, and Lourdes Renero, who's Puerto Rico and US. And our secretary isn't able to be with us, so that's Alex Gooding, Barbados.
I'm Elena Strong, co-president representing Bermuda.
Susan Garcia, treasurer representing the Caribbean.
Ariana Curtis, general board member, conference co-chair representing USA and Panama.
Nyasha Warren, general board member and co-chair for the conference representing Panama.
And Mathieu Acrobet is also here, but I'm somewhere in the audience. So MAC is most entirely volunteer run. So we have 11 board directors who carry out the work of MAC and contribute to the overall strategic goal. Well, we carry out our full-time jobs in our other institutions. We also have 5 committees: the conference committee, education and programs, advancement, communications and membership, and which are also populated by MAC volunteers as well as directors. Ideally, all board directors co-chair committees with a non-director who served 2 years, and this allows for mentorship and building of institutional knowledge. To be on the board, to get elected on the board, you have to be have been part of a working committee. You have to have volunteered. So if you're interested in providing your expertise and manpower, please come to us and reach out. Next. So while board directors and MAC volunteers are significantly involved in the association's operations, we do have paid support staff who do great work. This year, however, has been a little slimmer than previous years due to financial constraints. Pretty much soon after our Bahamas conference last year, our secretariat had to leave, and we did not have the funds to rehire, which has really impacted our operations. And the secretariat position is instrumental for assisting with administrative tasks, managing our membership database and renewals, dealing with correspondence and requests, and completing other very significant operational goals. Thank you so much to the directors and volunteers who really picked up the slack this year and allowed us to continue our work. And I'm really pleased to announce that thankfully we have, since the beginning of October, engaged Amani Simons from the National Museum of Bermuda, she's sitting over there, as our interim secretariat. This is supported by the National Museum Bermuda and also MAC. And so I'm pleased that we're back on track. And the last month, Amani has transformed our information management spreadsheets, progressed prepping our membership data for transitioning into a new database system, upgraded our membership form, has done all the conference registration and correspondence. And so this is allowed to really alleviate a lot of pressure and administrative tasks on the board. So thank you, Amani, and the National Museum Bermuda, which is me, so it's a bit weird thanking myself. So, though we did not have a secretariat, we still have other valued support team members who, and their pictures are up on the screen. So, who's not here today, but who've been texting madly and on the phone is Javier Bailey from Jamaica. He works behind the scenes doing our website and our tech guru. While we have no physical office space, it's so important that MAC can operate effectively digitally and remotely. Virtual programs and technology allow us to do this and have increased our accessibility and facilitated inclusivity and strengthened our reach. So to be truly regional, we also need to operate and communicate in multiple languages, and we couldn't do this work without our awesome simultaneous translators and interpreters, and those Janina Walters and Zaidi Sucre, and it was really cool to meet Janina in person because she's from Panama. And also Zaidi, but I haven't seen her yet, so I don't know if she's here today, so Zaidi, okay, so. And this year we've had the support of conference planning with Hutchinson's design group, and you see them working behind the scenes. So if Kyle and John, if you're around, say hi, and the rest of the Hutchinson's design team. It's really made for a very smooth conference, so thank you guys. And this wouldn't be possible without the partnership of the Office of Strategic Partnerships, Smithsonian Institute, National Museum of African American History, History and Culture. Okay.
All right, so just briefly, the history of MAC. It was established in 1987 with a mission to create a visible and accessible network for Caribbean museums and museum professionals. Our vision is to be the go-to resource for Caribbean and circum-Caribbean museums. We have 11 board members, and over the years, our conference has been between 85 to 100 persons. General membership being 85 to 100, conference 45 to 75 persons and attendees. That we have not had less than 100 people at a conference since the pandemic.
That's just general membership.
Just general membership?
Yeah.
No, but I mean for the conference.
Oh,
Yeah,
during
45.
conference. Yeah,
Conference.
sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we're having our back and forth. Yeah. And our program offerings include conferences, travel fellowships, educational programs, and collaborative programs for professional development. And our operational languages are English, French, and Spanish. And where possible, the Dutch Caribbean normally fills in and provides interpretation in Dutch where it's necessary. Thank you. All right. I've lost track of the slides. Never mind.
Now we're getting into our
All right, now we're into our agenda. Sorry, I lost track. Okay, so I'd like to officially call our meeting to order and begin with the approval of the 2023 AGM minutes, which were circulated earlier and again before this meeting. So I would like to begin with persons who approve the minutes. The board could, yes.
I motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. Minutes approved by Elena Strong and seconded by Ariana. All right, so we'll move on to the co-president's report for the...
It's recorded.
All right. So we're currently at a pivotal moment. We've gone through rapid growth in both demand of our services and international and regional recognition. We've had a massive jump in conference registrations, presenters, travel fellowship and scholarship applications, and then increased expansion of our services to our stakeholders with no equivalent increase in resources, staff, or board members. We have been operating without a secretariat, as mentioned before, but this meant that the board was doing basic things like responding to emails, trying to do social media, while also trying to provide programs. So with Amani now as our interim secretariat, we've corrected course, we've been able to tackle some key issues, and so now we can go about the business of doing the work of MAC as opposed to basic administrative work. We've continued to build our representation, in particular with specific expansion in the Dutch Caribbean, and we've increased our programs, and you'll hear about some of our work from the committee reports. And this year, this year we were focused on institutional stability, capacity building, succession planning, streamlining operations, and developing better budgets and forecasting, growing our membership, and actually trying to do data management, which is actually very important. So I'm going to hand over now to our conference co-chairs, Nyasha and Ariana.
Next slide, please. Okay. I'm going to have a little mini one so I don't have to strain my neck. Bear with me. All right. So we thought it would be useful to show you some comparative numbers from the conference last year and the conference that we're currently in. So as you can see, we have a consistent increase in conference attendees, which is wonderful. That also changes how the conference functions. So this is the first year, I believe, that the conference is taking place entirely in a hotel. And that is because we do have almost 200 people. And so transporting around Panama City is not easy. I think by now all of you have had a small taste of Panamanian traffic. Right? And so we do always want to maximize the time that we're spending together in conference sessions rather than spending so much time in transit. And also just being stationary facilitates our commitment to language accessibility. So this conference is trilingual, it's being presented in English, Spanish, and French. And so this also just allows people, to be in the same space, receive those different languages, and engage. You can see from the numbers we have a small decrease in the number of sessions, but note that the number of sessions does not include the keynote, it doesn't include the listening session or the annual general meeting. But one of the reasons for that is that we're in the hotel, and so you have to allot some time for lunch, right, to set up for lunch, to clean up after lunch. But you can also notice, although that there are a few fewer sessions from last year, there are significantly more presenters. And so we did take the feedback from last year. We standardized the schedule structure so that there are only 20, 40, or 60-minute sessions so that people knew exactly how long they would be. It would maximize the time that you're able to spend in sessions. And we were able to have more panel presentations this year. There were a lot more 60-minute, 40-minute session proposals than just individual sessions. And so in the past, sometimes for those of you that have come to MAC before, there have been a lot of individual presentations, and this year there are more group presentations, which is great, right? Because that is more people who are able to present here at the conference. I will note that we did offer, this is the first year on our proposal submission that we did offer poster sessions. So no one submitted a poster session, that's okay. We will continue to offer that, so that that can become a normalized part of this conference as well, and particularly so that we can continue to expand the disciplines that are represented at MAC. And so some of the feedback that we received is that poster sessions are a more viable presentation method for our science colleagues, for example. So just keeping that in mind as you talk about MAC, as we know that you will, when you go back to your home institutions, that is something that we do want to continue. So our increase of volunteers, I think, is the most striking number. And we just really, first of all, want to say thank you for that, because the increase in volunteer labor is a direct reflection of the increase of work it takes to put this conference on. And so you all have responded in that way for us, and we are truly, truly appreciative. We have an increase in countries. We have an increase in sponsors, also necessary to grow our financial base for the growing conference needs. And I just also thought it was a fun fact, since we are collecting more and more demographic data, that here at the conference, the networking, the mentorship that is so important to MAC, our age range of conference attendees is between 79 and 22 years old. So there are multiple generations of museum professionals represented here from different places, and I think that's one of the things that makes this conference really special. Next slide, please. All right, so if we can just take one small moment, and if you are a MAC Travel Fellow or a Panama Fellow, please stand so you can be acknowledged by your peers.
Todos los becarios panameños pueden pararse para reconocerlos.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for contributing to this conference. So our fellowship program is a professional development program that prioritizes applicants who are new to the field, no matter your age. If you are new to the field, you're new to the field. Applicants who, by their own self-definitions, help diversify our field, and applicants that need financial assistance to attend the conference. And so just really briefly, just so people understand how this process works, we accept applications in English, Spanish, and French. It's a blind review, so everyone's names are removed from their applications before they're scored by our committee of of conference travel fellows. So we can see that we received 56 applications this year. And so we have a little bit more work to do about our language diversity, but I will say that there are many people who submitted their applications in English who do speak other languages. So it's a little bit skewed in that way. But in the past, I think, we just wanted to make this point, that in the past, I think presenters also relied on applying for the travel fellowship to fund their conference attendance, or felt that they would have a really good chance of getting a fellowship because the applicant pool was so small. And so we wanted everyone to see that the applicant pool is not small. So, putting all of your effort into the application, it has become a very competitive and prestigious fellowship. We're very proud of that. And so as we continue to spread the word, just know that this is a way in which people can access this fellowship. And I think the popularity of the fellowship now is also a statement about the viability of a cultural heritage job in this region. And so just really grateful that MAC is one of the spaces in which people can see themselves working in this field, right, professionally, not just as something that they would do on the side.
Okay, and I'd love to talk now a little bit about the Panama Fellows. So, and I'm going to relate that a little bit to the numbers we talked about with presenters. This is also probably the first time that we've had that many local presenters. So one of the things that we've really tried to do in this conference is increase our reach and hopefully our impact. So we've got more presenters from the country we're in. And then also, thanks to Senacit, we've been able to have 20 fellows from Panama. And I'd like to just talk a little bit about what that really means. So we, like other countries, don't have museum studies programs in Panama. We don't have those kinds of programs at our universities yet. However, there are many among us, including our fellowship recipients, that if that existed, we would probably go there. We just haven't done it because of, and this kind of opportunity pretty much opens up that space. precisely for those of us who didn't have it in the moment, but we dared to, and I'm going to cite here, I was just at an artist panel, so I want to cite Gianna De Dier and Milko Delgado, who talked about imagining what isn't there, imagining what could have been, imagining, and I'm going to add, imagining what our future could be, right? Milko mentioned something about creating spaces that don't exist. This is what we're doing. Right? And I want to mention, I don't remember their names, but I remember talking many years ago to two Senecit scholarship recipients who did their PhDs abroad. When Panamanians get scholarships like the ones we get from Senecit to go abroad, sometimes we go to study things that don't yet exist here. So we're not going to fill a position that exists. We have to go imagining what we want for the future. And that's what we've tried to do here. And that's what you guys are doing here. So thank you for applying. And I'm so glad that you're here. You can go to the next slide now. Okay, and here we really just wanted to, I'm not going to read through all of these things, but you can see the different kind of committees that we've had to put together to do all the work that we do. So within MAC, we have some subcommittees which do everything from proposal selection and travel fellowships organization and all the other things that you see. But in addition, we added 3 new subcommittees which have to do with risk management, travel requirements, video and photography, and well, as you can imagine, these are needs that you always have, but maybe you don't always have someone dedicated to focusing on that. And we've decided to add that as well. Translation, of course, our conference booklet is a huge job. And then locally, our host subcommittees deal with everything from finding the venues where we're going to do everything, raising funds, recruiting all the volunteers, as we said. It is more than 70 volunteers, but thanks to Museo del Canal, we also have about at least, Museo del Canal staff is over 60 people. And many of those people have designated work time to be able to help us do that, right? So between SAMAP and the recruitment of the volunteers and Museo del Canal, and as you know, that is humongous, and we cannot do it without that. Event planning, of course, our tours, hospitality, dealing with all the things that you need to know about, merchandising. And then there are other things that don't have committees, like the schedule, which anybody who's done this before knows the schedule is its own little monster. It moves around so much, and then you hope that it's not going to change. And yeah, so that's what, oh, and of course, we mentioned before, but I'll mention it again, part-time constructed staff for tech support, social media, and administrative staff that we've mentioned as well. So we can go to the next slide.
And this is really just the wrap up, just so you have a sense that when we're asking for your feedback through different periods of MAC about the conference, we take it very seriously. You know, a lot of the processes that we implemented this year or things that we were able to clarify this year is because of the feedback we've received in the past. So as we're wrapping up the conference, I just, wanted to put it in green so you all know we will take a short rest. So if you email us directly after the conference, please give us a moment to rest, and then we will respond. But we will edit and upload all of the conference session recordings. I think, as you all know, that every conference session is being recorded, so those will be available. We will send you a conference survey, and we're asking you to please respond, because we do value that feedback, especially because we've made so many changes this year, and this is our biggest conference to date, that we really do want to know how it felt for you as attendees, how it felt for you as fellows, presenters. And then just the constant review cycle and feedback cycle that we have when we're doing this conference between the MAC board and the host committee, looking at what went well and what we can improve, the volunteer committees, even if their committee work is already done, for example, the proposal selection, we come back and say what worked, what didn't work, so we can constantly improve every year. And then obviously with the board, just reviewing all of our documents and processes, evaluating our organizational structure, as Shani and Elena talked about before, right? Like as MAC grows, as the conference grows, are we growing the organization in appropriate ways to support that, so this can still be the great experience every year that we want it to be for people. And lastly, Thank you. Thank you to all of our sponsors. I think that's it for us.
That's it for us.
So hearing from you and getting feedback and making sure that we're serving our community members is really important to us. And a new component of the conference, which we started last year, and thank you to our sponsor, the Reckoning with Our Racial Past, we held our first listening session. And that 25 regional leaders came together so we could discuss our strengths, our needs, our challenges of the sector, and explore ways to foster greater collaboration. The report was circulated within our financial year, and 3 key themes emerged, and it was advocacy, building capacity, and strategy. So yesterday, we wanted to build on that work, and we're calling it a listening session, but really it was a workshop, and I think it was an action session, and 20 museum leaders came together. I'm building on what we did last year, and we've come up with actionable items to guide MAC's work for this year. So we will put out the report later this year, and it's really looking at collective collaborative work that are realistic to achieve. So I look forward to sharing those results. Our secretary and our chair of communications is upstairs not feeling well. So Shani's going to report on the communications.
Okay. Yes, on my phone. All right. So as MAC continues to grow, and under our past presidents, Joanne and Natalie, we did a lot of growth during the pandemic, which meant that we increased our presence in this cyber world. However, if anyone is familiar with social media, it requires a specialist. And as such, capacity is an issue in our ability to regularly communicate with our stakeholders what work is being done, what program is upcoming, and because we are committed to functioning in 3 languages, it has to be translated and scheduled and so on and so forth. So over the course of the year, we got quite a few complaints about delay in responses, and it's because we do not have the capacity. We're all volunteers, and we all have full-time jobs. And doing MAC work without the secretariat is the equivalent of having another full-time job, unpaid labor job. That said, we had, as of the 2024, we have a table here with the increased numbers for each platform. Okay, just read it, because this is not my area, so just read it. But I just want you to know that we are working, and we are providing the feedback that is, it continues to grow steadily. And we communicate via eBlast, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and those numbers are growth numbers. Okay. Next slide. Advancement.
Okay. So advancement, we recognize that to secure a stable future for MAC, we need to grow our philanthropic support, in addition to membership fees and other streams of revenue. So to propel MAC forward, we established MAC's Advancement Committee in 2022. We created our first annual fund plan in 2023, which we continue to implement. The plan included a new donor membership database, which we have built, but due to lack of administrative staff, we haven't implemented, but we actually are going to skyrocket into doing that because we have Amani on our team now. And we also, last year, we launched our first ever digital appeal where we sent out to all our membership. And I just want to say thank you so much for those who donated. Your support has helped with operations, with translations, and simultaneous interpretation for our programs. And guess what? We're going to send out our second appeal very soon after this conference. So we really appreciate your consideration and your generosity. We are cognizant that our membership does not have deep pockets, so we are focused on increasing our grant support and looking for European funds so that we can continue having a stable future. So if you do have expertise in grant writing, I would love to have you on the advancement committee. So please seek me out during this evening.
Okay, so one of our key areas is our online webinars, which unfortunately they're an hour. And I know that professional development is an issue in the region, specifically because almost none of us have museum programs in our countries, nor are they real museum programs, i.e. that they're teaching you practical skills that you can implement. So most of us learn on the job. So in keeping with our vision for inclusivity, accessibility, and professional development through collaboration, we had 3 webinars this year. The first one was Preparing for Hurricane Season by Emily Lumas, which is very important because hurricane season did start on time, and every hurricane since has escalated from 1 to 5 in 24 hours. And that tells us that we're entering crisis zone in the Caribbean. The second one was Fundraising Trends and Fundamentals by Natalie Skinner and Alison Reeves of CCS Fundraising, and they presented earlier today. And then the last one, which is Disaster Response in the Heritage Sector, which we did in collaboration with Carabica, which is a Caribbean branch of the International Council of Archives, where we spoke about disaster and CER. We had consistently over 75% attendance. So we had higher than usual registration, which grew systematically through each program. The last one being disaster response, where we had 103 participants and 178 persons registered. We provided simultaneous interpretation for each of these webinars. The last one was done in all 3 languages, English, Spanish, and French. And we had uploaded one. We're in the process of uploading the others. Please remember limited capacity, both in time and person, and so we're getting there. Coming out of our engagement with collaborative work, our collaborative work began with Carabica, for example, began with the launch of the Cultural Emergency Response Hub in March of this year, which allowed us to reconnect with our colleagues in the Dutch Caribbean. And it allowed us to move forward piloting an affiliate membership. We're test trying this with our colleagues at the Association of Museums and Heritage of Curacao, and the goal is that MAC has a membership program for countries where all the museums are already gathered in an association. And so the goal is for those museums within that association to access and benefit from MAC programming without each having to individually register. And we're trying it out to see what is possible in the future. And I want to thank my colleagues in Curacao for being willing to work with us. We've cleaned up the database, we've acquired new members, and part of the cleaning up of the database is regularizing the membership year so that membership gets automatically renewed and noticed, and it's not us manually sending out emails. And we're going to transition to Airtable, which is a database management system. And of course, we continue to review our membership practices going forward.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I have the pleasure of presenting to you the financial report. We're not totally in the red. Because of you, because I didn't have to run down too many people to pay their membership, etc. Thank you, and because so many of you came out here came to be with us here at this conference here in Panama. Thank you for your support, as always. But don't worry, when you fail to pay your, if you forget, I'll remind you that you have to pay your membership dues. So you would have gotten your the income and expenditure. You may have gotten it a bit late because like my colleagues were explaining, we are a working board and it's not always easy to get things out as fast as we'd want to. But you would have received it. If not, it's probably in your spam or something. So look it up. So our current assets as of 30th of September, so our financial year goes from the 1st of October N-1 to the 30th of September. So it was 1,177% up from the prior year. And that's because we got a lot of our monies, we got it between July and September, just before the financial year ended. So that's why it seems as if we have lots of money. That, of course, we're about to spend it because we haven't paid. Remember, we got the money at that time before the conference, but we are going to be paying all the conference expenses like between now and the end of the year, okay? So although we look as if we have lots of money, okay, we don't really. So current liabilities as at 30th of September 2024 decreased 18%, and once again that's because we've paid up everything that we've had to pay up for the moment, but the bills are coming in. So overall profit in the year ending 30th of September 2024, you see the increase. The main reasons for the difference are as follows. Remember, conference in the Bahamas was in March 2023. So we would have received all grants and conference monies before this. So we would have received grants and conference monies from the end of 2022, early 2023. And conference expenses would have been paid out by the end of the financial year 2023. So you would have gotten all of that in last year's financial report. Because the conference is being held in November 2024, the significant increase in income is due to conference registration fees, membership renewals, and Smithsonian grant coming in before the end of the financial year, September 2024. Conference income received decreased in financial year 2023-2024 by 28% because the conference, we haven't paid for the conference, for this conference yet. That's the main reason. So other revenue, membership income increased by 15% as there were more members registered for November conference in 2024. Remember, our MAC is registered in Martinique, registered, and our bank account is in euros. We do have a euro and a US account, but euro is the main currency being used. So you would see that the financial, when you go into the financial, all the monies, and you see both euro and US amounts. The membership income with euro in 2024 was 25,603.11, and in 2023 it was 22,972. There was a rush to register and pay since the official launch of the conference and this explains the increase before the end of the financial year. Included in the membership revenue is conference sponsorship from historic New Orleans collection, of $5,000. Thank you, Historic New Orleans Collection. We hope that you are pleased with what we did, with your contribution, with your sponsorship, and we will see you again next year. The Smithsonian grant received during the year 2024 is $50,000, euro 49,480. This grant received is used for MAC 24 conference expenses and especially the travel fellows expenses. Thank you, Smithsonian, the Office of Strategic Partnership. Thank you, thank you, thank you for supporting us. Well, we said we had decreased salaries, well, because we didn't have a secretary. We paid a tax preparation expense in 2024, which we didn't have in 2023, well, in 2024 for the 2023-2024 financial year, but we won't have that again this year because, like I said, since we are no longer in the US, we don't have any taxes, federal nor state, to pay. Yeah. The 2024 also saw spend on software to adapt to a digital world. Since COVID, we know that we are using that metaverse, as we call it. We're using it. And getting quite good at it, actually. So there has been an increase. In conclusion, we have benefited from the generous and gracious support of sponsors, especially from the Smithsonian once again. Yay, thank you. And this funding has fueled our growth and provided us with key resources to be a more inclusive and diverse organization, responsive to the needs of our stakeholders. MAC's executive board has developed a more comprehensive budget and cash forecasting that spans over 18 months to capture our projected revenue and spending between conferences. Financial forecasting allows us to plan, manage, and control our resources, facilitating informed decision-making, sustained growth, and stability. The financial year ends September 30th. Since then, bills have been paid for the period October to December. As such, this financial statement might be a little misleading. MAC's financial health depends on its members renewing their memberships, whether institutional or individual. You, my people, you, my family, play as the liaison for MAC within your institution. It is up to each and every one of you to make sure that the MAC membership renewal is budgeted and paid in a timely manner each year. This is essential in light of the changing financial climate. It is this moment in our development that we need grant writers. We want to ask for grants from everybody, whether in the US, Europe, North America, South America, it could be US or Canada, North America, South America, wherever, Central America, Europe, whoever has the money, CARICOM, whoever. We're asking them, but we need people who know how to do it. You have experts out there. So whether it be people working with you, whether it just be a friend, introduce us to them. We will convince them that we know how to, we'll convince them that we need them. Yes, okay. If each of our members, and this is what I want you to commit yourselves to, please. If each of our member institutions bring 3 or 4 other member institutions into the fold, and every individual member commits to bring in at least one other person, we will survive. If you have any patrons, you know, your own support people, financial support, who you might want to share with MAC, or who might be interested in partnering with MAC for the advancement of our association, please bring them into the family. Thank you.
All right, so now the moment we've been waiting for. You can move on from all the stress and strain of management, our keynote.
Oris, I want to properly introduce you, so if you can please go back so I can invite you formally. Yeah, so I'll do all the, yeah, this one we can keep. Okay, wonderful. Thank you everyone for listening to our business first, and now the treat. So this conversation is called Institutional Resilience and Leading for the Future. And I do just want to start very briefly as a segue, because I know it still remains top of mind and heart for a lot of us. So I just wanted to take a very small minute to honor Faith Davis Ruffins, because I knew her well because she was one of the first people who reached out to me when I started working at the Smithsonian almost 12 years ago. And it really was fueled by her deep love of Washington, D.C., which included the Anacostia Community Museum, which is where I was working. So she would always bring her interns and fellows to the Anacostia, not just to know the museum, right? We often talk about institutions, but to know the people who worked there. And so our friendship grew over the years as she really very consistently brought her interns, fellows, anyone who she was working with, she would make sure that they knew about the Anacostia Community Museum as part of the Smithsonian Institution and the community-oriented work that they did. And over the years, Faith became a mentor to me, and I always valued that in her mentorship, she was not someone who tried to remake people into her professional image or what she thought they should be or how their careers should go, but rather encouraged my development, even if it was different from her own, made me aware of opportunities, made space to share and to listen, and really supported the professional that I wanted to grow into. And so I know she did this for me, and she did this for many other people. So I just wanted to publicly uplift that deliberate, consistent, and tenderness of her mentorship as a substantial part of the legacy that she created at the Smithsonian and beyond. And so, and I wanted to uplift those in particular because one of the reasons I was very excited to moderate our keynote conversation today is because those are the same kinds of traits and mentorship that I personally receive, but I know other people do as well, from both Lonnie Bunch and our keynote, who's actually here. So I will say Lonnie sends his deepest regrets that he couldn't be here, and please do know he was so excited to come to Panama, but his schedule changed in ways that he could not avoid. So in his absence, the conversation will just be between me and Dr. Oris Sanjur. Yes. So I met Orisa in 2019, I think is when we met in Washington. And the connection was immediate. You know, when you're Panamanian, you meet another Panamanian, that's it, you're friends for life. So I feel really grateful for all the support that you've given to me. You are a big deal internationally, and yet you always make time and space to advise, to chat, to laugh, if we're in DC or in Panama. So as the official bio, Dr. Oris Sanjur is currently the Deputy Director of the Panama-based Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute. Her relationship with STRI, which is the acronym for Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute, spans 3 decades, beginning when she was a research assistant in 1989. After completing her PhD in biology at Rutgers University, she returned as a postdoctoral fellow in 1998. Since then, Oris has served in a variety of research and administrative roles, including as interim director at STRI in 2020. When she became interim director in 2020, that made her the first woman ever to lead STRI and the first Panamanian man or woman to lead STRI. In 2013, she was selected as one of the 10 pioneering women in science in Panama. She was honored as the 2015 Distinguished Woman of the Year by the Panamanian Association of Business Executives, and in 2020 was named one of the most powerful women in Central America by Forbes magazine. And she didn't know I was going to read this bio. That's why I was like, you need to just sit there and accept your flowers. In 2021, Oris, as interim director at STRI and a Panamanian scientist, was selected by Lonnie G. Bunch III, Secretary of the Smithsonian Institution, to receive the Secretary's Gold Medal for exceptional service. And that is the highest honor that you can achieve as a Smithsonian staff member. So it is truly my honor to now welcome to the stage Dr. Oris Sanjur. Welcome.
Thank you, Ariana. Good afternoon, everyone. Actually, it's such an honor and a pleasure to be here with you today. And thank you so much for that amazing introduction. Quite frankly, when I listen to all of that, I'm like, who's that person, quite frankly? It's like, wow. Thank you so much. I feel honored, grateful, and very, it's a pleasure as well to be here today to talk about leadership and about, I want to share with you a bit of my history, what brought me here, and I hope that my words can lift you up, make you better, and really be the leaders that this world needs. So I look forward to our conversation, Ariana. I look forward also to connect with many of you. I think in the audience there are already many people that I know, but some of you, I just want to let you know that when we get to high positions, those positions are there just for have your shoulders for others to come and lift them over. So I am honored. Thank you so much for this amazing invitation. And for those of you who are coming from abroad, welcome to Panama, welcome to our wonderful country, and I look forward to connecting better with you. So Ariana, thanks so much again, my friend. I am so deeply grateful to you for inviting me to this event.
Wonderful. So we're going to jump right in because I have so many questions for you, and we're not going to get to them all, I know. So just as I said in your bio, you were the first female director of STRI, the first Panamanian director of STRI. And what was really special is that your historic firsts were part of the exhibition that was displayed both here in Panama as well as in Washington, D.C., that celebrated 100 years of Barro Colorado Island. And so obviously for me as a woman, as a Panamanian, as a Smithsonian colleague, I was immensely proud of you when it happened, but I think it was also just so important to see that as part of an exhibition, because it's not just STRI history, it's Smithsonian history that was being made, and so many of these firsts, we talk about, but they were actually on the walls of museums for millions of people to see. So, when you were named interim director, what did it mean to you then? Right, because you were also named in a very tumultuous time. Yeah. And as you think back on that time, what does it mean to you now?
Well, that's a great question, thank you. All right, so let's provide a bit of context of how I became the interim director, because I think it's important to provide that context. By the end of 2019, we had our director at the time had actually announced his retirement. And being the person who I am and the person who likes to take risk, I had actually already sort of step in and say, in case the position opens, I would like to be considered. So that's before the pandemic. We didn't know that the pandemic was just right around the corner. And just in February, March, when the pandemic started, our director said, I'm retiring in June. And I received a call from DC, from the Undersecretary for Science, and I was thinking, well, he's going to come and ask me, who do you think should be the next director for STRI, and how do we work on that? And lo and behold, he asked me, can you take the position? And I had to set at a pause for a moment. I had to take a deep breath, and I thought, oh my God. Remember, this is March 2020, pandemic was still not there yet. We had barely announced that. So I'm thinking, well, you were thinking about that. Go for it. So I said, okay, I'll take the position. It's going to be a temporary position until the new director comes in, but I will have full responsibility for leading Stride during the time that a new director was appointed. I took position in June 2020, and when I accepted, I didn't know what I was in front of. I mean, I didn't know that a pandemic was in front of us. I thought, okay, we have this issue with the virus. It's going to be a few months, couple of months. I didn't know what it was that I was going to confront. And I want to share with you what I was up to during that year. So I said yes, I took all three, and those who stay could be kept safe. Named director, this is a personal story, interim director. My daughter, I have a daughter, she came running into my room and said, Mom, what did you do? And I said, kid, what happened? It's like, you're in the news. It's like, I'm in the news. Why am I in the news? I'm like, why is that? So I called one of my colleagues on my communication staff and asked, what's happening now? He said, Oris, the word got out that you are the new interim director, and it's a big deal. Because people immediately, so I hadn't seen it. I have to say, I had not realized that I was the first woman, the first Panamanian, the first anything to be taking that position. And that moment, something dawned on me, and I want to share that with you. I'm like, oh my God, I cannot screw up this thing. And I'm telling you why, because being first comes with a lot of pride and honor, but a huge responsibility of what you represent in your community and your institution. So I didn't see the honor at that moment, I have to say. What I saw is like, if I don't make this true, you know what's going to happen. What's going to happen? What's going to happen is like, she couldn't do it. And I couldn't afford to do that. So I had two options. I either was successful or was successful. There was no option for me. So that kept me going. So that was what was in my mind when I took the position.
But now that you know that you were the first in all of these ways, now that you are memorialized as the first in all of these ways in a Smithsonian exhibition that will now be part of Smithsonian Institution history and archives, how does it feel now?
It feels, what actually made me really proud of that is that I opened the door and I broke a glass ceiling for many people. And looking back and reflecting, one thing that I want to share with you is I kept true to my leadership style and to my values. I didn't try to become anything that I couldn't do. I led with heart, I led with empathy, I led with passion. And those are traits that sometimes in this world are not really valued. So going back into what lessons I learned and what did I think it's been important is, or what I would like to share is that being who I was, who I am, and who I want to be, the values that I represent were so important to me that that's what kept me going. Had I decided to be otherwise, I would have failed because I wouldn't been feeling like my own skin of who I was. And the important part of this is not what it represents to me. It's what it represented to Panama, to my community, and to the people who saw me, to young generations, to younger women and younger men to say, you know, if she did it, I could do it too. I come from a rural community in the countryside of Panama. I grew up in like this near the border with Costa Rica. So, and all my life I went to public school. I mean, I was a child like anyone else. And that's what people saw. It's like, you know, you had a history of not great glory, but you made it. It means that when you work hard, when you're committed, with your passion, what you love, what you do, you can get to great places if you really think of it hard and work hard on it.
So I'm going to try and combine a few questions into one. And it's about leadership, but also developing new leaders, right? This kind of succession planning. So if you can talk to us a little bit about like your definition of leadership or how your leadership practice has changed over the years, because I think one of the noteworthy things is that you have a long history with Stride, you know, as an institution, that you have accessed that space in multiple ways, you know, from a research assistant to director. And so what is leadership to you And how do you apply that leadership in a science unit like STRI?
Absolutely. So the way I define leadership is like an inverted pyramid. When the leader is at the bottom of the pyramid and the pyramid opens. A good leader to me is one that helps others shine. And through that light, he or she shines. A leader is one that inspires people. To me, leadership is not about being the top person in the organization. It's about a commitment to inspire and teach others, and how you make the difference in your community, in your organization, in the world. How your actions have ripple effects, and how you can transform others. So to me, that's leadership. So through the years, the basic of what I feel about leadership has sort of been constant. How I managed and how I've grown and matured in my role, that's what has changed. How I have acquired different abilities, and how my commitment to leadership has also been supported through the years. And I want to think that people in your life who support you is pretty important. Who surrounds you, it's really important. You mentioned something along those lines when you were doing introduction about people who have supported you and have the influence that they've had. That is important. And through the years, what I become, and that's intentional. I want to say that leadership is not something that you learn just because, oh, I'm going to be a leader. No. You got to be intentional and you want to learn to be a leader. You want to decide to take the challenge of making that change. So through the years, my leadership has matured. There's one thing that I want to share. There's something called fear. And I want to ask all of you, how many of you who are in any position have ever felt fear for anything? Can you raise your hand? Fear. So leadership is also about how to deal with your own personal fears, whatever those are, and how you use fear to fill your life with love and to be able to fuel your actions, because fear can help you grow if you use it in the right way.
I'm going to skip ahead. I had a different question about mentorship, but we can maybe circle back. But since you're talking about that, and you were leading during the time of COVID, I mean, what we wanted to talk about on this panel is just institutional resilience, not just individual resilience, right? But how are we actually making our institutions better than how we receive them? When we leave, how are they better institutions than when we found them? So thinking about the COVID period in particular, but you remain deputy director at STRI, so you're still very much in a position of leadership there. How is it, one during COVID and now, how did you balance those immediate needs with the long-term goals, right? Because you're trying to care for yourself as an individual, your family in this time, but also making sure that the institution, as you've referenced, the institution is moving forward with the long-term things it needs, even though it might immediately feel like you're in crisis. How do you balance those things in terms of leadership?
So, balance in your life, how you balance your personal life gets to be a reflection on how you balance the institution. I believe that the people that I admire the most who are leaders, true leaders in my view, are people who somehow translate their personal values, institutional goals. A critical aspect is, one, that you come to the reality of what your institution needs. Two, that you set clear priority. And three, that you act on those priorities. And that's not easy sometimes, because sometimes that requires that you say no, that you close things, that you are going to disappoint people. And how do you manage those conflicts is, to me, what becomes key. People will love you when you say yes to everything and you give everyone what they want. But what our institutions sometimes need is to be resilient. To put your point, Ariana, of how you manage with resilience. Resilience is also about how you're able to support change, move change. And keep in mind that this is, as you all know, a changing world. So how to adapt to change and how do you lead through change, it's important through. So I would say that a key aspect of if you're leading an organization or if you are actually leading a department or you are in any role that you have impact is, first of all, you need to do a personal reflection of what you want, and two, how you're going to reflect that into whatever it is that you're leading or you are, you're trying to accomplish. It is very important. Organization, both your mental, emotional organization is important. So people who's looking at you know that you can be vulnerable, but they can still trust you. And I want to talk a little bit about trust. Trust is critically important because if there's no trust, it's very hard for anyone to accomplish anything, pretty much.
That's a good segue into talking about collective self-care and institutional culture. So again, I feel like during the pandemic, there was more public discussions about self-care, particularly individually. And I felt like there was a time when institutions, organizations wanted to create space for people to be able to have that for themselves. I will say for myself, sorry Smithsonian, I felt like that was slowly snatched back, like, okay, we're out of that period now. So really my question is about, I've seen leaders asked how they have prioritized themselves and their own self-care as leaders, which is important. But I'm also interested in how we build a culture of care for the whole, right? How is it that leadership is building an institutional culture in which people don't have to ask for these things, right? But it's just part of how it is that we work. So how do you, as a leader, prioritize the mental and emotional well-being of your employees? What did that look like during the pandemic? And what has that looked like, quote unquote, post-pandemic?
So during the pandemic, having a plan for mental health and physical and health was very key, as you know. So usually we have rules in our organization that we need to follow, and rules about when you start to work, when you need to finish the work, when the deliverable is. I think during the pandemic what I did is I flexibilized rules. I mean, the rules were become more flexible. And recognizing that if people needed to accomplish tasks, they could do it in a given time, but also recognizing that having a moment for their personal health, physical and mental, what's important. Think of it, you cannot ask someone to give you something if that person is not well. So it works on the benefit of the organization if you ensure that there are mechanisms or way that that person can be healthy. It was a very important time during the pandemic to be able to address all sorts of health, including institutional health, because that's another important one. And there are two aspects of health when you talk about mental health or physical health, and I want to add to that institutional health. One, after the pandemic now, what we've done, and keep in mind that STRIDE is very multicultural. We have students from more than 50 countries. We are a US organization in Panama, so that means that we live in sort of two worlds. So acknowledging that multiculturality and making sure that we create those spaces, and we're working on it. Now, I also want to say that Arden alluded to cultural change, and that's not easy. To be able to drive, to lead through culture, it's not an easy. So we are in that process of creating those spaces so people feel safe, and I think we're going to talk about another kind of safety in a minute. And at the same time, we create spaces for healthy working environments. Because sometimes, if people are not comfortable, there might be toxic environments that really don't lead to productivity and don't create spaces for people to feel safe or trusted. So in thinking about leadership, it's not only important to think about your personal mental health and your physical health. You also need to think about the health of the people you're working with, and also the health of the institution, the environment where people work. What are the aspects that people consider are important for connecting, for collaborating, for making sure they're efficient and effective in their roles?
So In what ways do you think the pandemic exposed some trouble spots that can positively change the landscape of research, cultural institutions, museums? So for me, I would say that I think there was a recognition, this recognition of mental and emotional wellness as part of what you needed for work. I think on the other side of that was also a recognition of burnout, particularly in the industries in which we occupy. And so how do you feel like, as we're moving out of COVID and pandemic being the center of how we're building these kind of landscapes of care, how do you feel this has affected the long-term institutional culture in the fields that we inhabit?
So I am actually talk very generally. I think when we were in the middle of the pandemic, there were a lot of lessons learned. But I have to say that somehow I think we're starting to forget those. And we are going back to the old ways. And I think during the pandemic, we learned that those, the care that you mentioned, Ariana, we prioritize the physical care, the emotional care, the mental health care, and we were more empathetic and more kind in many ways. And I'm finding that as the year has passed after 2021, that pretty much everything came back to quote-unquote normal, we are not remembering what it felt like to be locked down. So my concern is that we haven't learned. We thought we learned, and that we should probably take a moment to look back to learn what worked then to be able to apply it now. And institutionally, what happened is we're in this rapid pace of change that we need to accomplish thing. I think we're back to that, like this fast pace of getting things done, that we're not taking care of the critical and important matters. And that to me is a big challenge.
And is that, sorry, just to follow up with that, is that something that you feel like, are these conversations that are happening at a leadership level about, understanding what kind of care and concern was given to staff, employees, contractors, any affiliated persons during COVID that perhaps is being lost? Because I would say that there are times when it feels like people are pushing back, saying, this is what we needed then, but we still need it now, and wondering if leadership is receptive to that. Does it have to always be a push, or are these conversations that you're finding are also happening in leadership circles?
Those conversations happen at different levels, but at the same time, there are different priorities, let's put it this way. So it's happening. I do want to say that the before and after, there is a difference. It's not all lost. It could be better, maybe, generally speaking. Our institution, we are implemented as a result of the pandemics and as a result of a series of events that happened at our organization. We implemented some changes associated to caring for the health of our community, including having programs for mental health, having building communities so people could feel safer, having groups that people can report when they're not feeling safe for any reason. So for Strive, we have implemented some changes that aim to create that community. Are we there yet? I will say no. Is there opportunity for making better? Yes. Do we have awareness that there is a need there? Yes. So I think the important part here, Diana, is that there's awareness and the conversation also happening, that we're not closing the door. And even though we might not have it all together, we do have an opportunity to raise the voices and say, oh, hey, this is something that we need to be doing.
Understood. So I'm going to pivot again, that you've already alluded to, so we'll just dive right into it. So as a preamble, a key phrase in the title of this session is institutional resilience. And so at this conference especially, we want to recognize the incredible efforts of everyone in this room, everyone in our networks, the work that we do in our field. And oftentimes we come to conferences to share our scholarship and talk about our programs, celebrate our successes, to connect with other like-minded cultural workers around the region. And this year we really wanted to make sure we discuss all parts of what this work entails. And so in 2021, 16 women scientists told BuzzFeed News about their experience of being exploited by powerful men at STRI. And so this was a very public Me Too movement for the Smithsonian. And so we did vet these questions ahead of time. So you as a respected and public woman in science, a leader at STRI specifically, so how do you as a female leader, a face of STRI leadership, navigate your support for these women, support STRI's history and mission, while trying to change it for the better? You know, and what kind of pressures do you feel different from your male colleagues in doing this work?
Yeah, this is a very sensitive topic. Harassment, particularly sexual harassment in academia, in the museum world, in any setting. And unfortunately, sexual harassment in academia is second to, I think, military harassment. It's sad. So I want to share with you that as I was dealing with the pandemics and leading STRI, it also fell in my lap a huge sexual harassment case that Ariana alluded to. And wanted to think that things happen for a reason. And I think my mission was there to support the institution in this period of time. The case was international. It was not an easy moment for our organization. Many of us broke. Some people could not be unbelieved. I, as a director, had to take very tough decisions. It was not an easy. I was heavily criticized because of some of the decisions I had to make because there was not a known, the institution was not particularly known until it became public. So we have a little bit of time?
Yeah, we're still good. I'm sorry.
Okay. So how do we deal with that? What happened with a huge thing like a news like that breaking right in your face? First of all, we needed to connect with the survivors. It was a hard time for them. It was, the cases were very, very, very public, very different cases, different experiences. The second thing we needed to do is address the issue with the perpetrators. How do you disconnect them from the organization? How do you handle that? How do you make the community safe? And I just want to say, to this day, we're still working on it. An institution doesn't recover that easily because you cannot just say, I did this and done. No. You need to acknowledge the pain and what people went through, and you need to be very respectful. Communication, clear communication, a lot of empathy, a lot of care, particularly mental, physical care for those people is important, but also for those who were around what happened around. So what we did is, in this was a transition, this happened when I transitioned between my period as a director and the new director, so we both had to work very carefully in setting up a communication strategy, but very important, we had to talk to the survivors, we had to address the community, we implemented an anti-harassment plan immediately. Actually, it was the first that was implemented in Smithsonian at the moment. We had to address questions, we need to become public. We needed to become comfortable coming to settings like this to talk and say, no, we do not accept sexual harassment. It happened, we're very sorry it happened, we're working to make it better, and we just ask for your consideration as we move forward. So I just want to say that it happens, and I just want to acknowledge that if it happens in your community, it's a difficult thing to do, but there are ways to address it, but most importantly, what are the steps you take to avoid that and to never have that happen again?
And just following up on that, for all of the leaders in the room, how is it that we can help create and reinforce an organization's commitment, right, to safe working environments, to anti-colonial practice, the kinds of changes that we know we want to make in our organization? From your leadership perspective, how do you communicate that these are welcome changes?
One of the things that is important is people read you. You need to be true to your values. You need to stand up, and when you stand up and say, this is what I believe, you need to believe in that. So that's important. Second, listen to your people. And I was listening to that you have listening sessions. it is very important to keep connected to the people and listen. Listen with not only with your mind, but your heart, what people want and how they feel. And sometimes you don't want to hear what they want to say. So one of the things that we did is we did an internal survey so people could say how they felt. Of course, as you can imagine, the results of the survey were hard to read. But we need to acknowledge that that's how the community felt. So being able to acknowledge the community, and once you know and you have a base to start with, then start working and putting together what the values of organization is. It's involve people, hear people, make sure to create those spaces of trust so people can talk to you, and even you might be having very hard conversation. That's what leadership is about. It's about leading. It's about making the change. It's about connecting with people. It's about making sure that others feel comfortable and safe in the spaces that you develop and you're creating.
And my final question before we open it up for questions is just the quintessential question that we're asking everyone to consider at this conference this year. So that is, what changes must we embrace today to ensure that museums, research centers, cultural heritage institutions remain alive and relevant for future generations? From your perspective, what are those changes?
We're in a very challenging time all over. I'm a scientist, I mentioned that before. I will add to that, Ariana, changes associated to how we see our environment. Changes not only associated to our communities, the museum, the academia, but also how we connect to decision makers, to people who decide policies. How do we read those messages? I'm very concerned, I have to say, about, in general, what we're doing. I came back from COP16, the conference of the party on Cali on biodiversity. How do we protect biodiversity? And what does this has to do with us here? A lot, because that's our environment. I mean, and we connect in many different ways. I just want to put that as an example. To me, a key part of that is education. More than anything, how do we educate? And I think we need to educate in a transformative way. Not only traditionally, we need to educate our next generation of leaders, of museum curators, of the people who are going to be part of this academic community, thinking what the future is going to look like. And I want to acknowledge that we are confronting a very, very different future than probably some of us here had sort of thought about. It's a rapid pace, big on technology. It's also a future that has a lot of environmental changes. And that is going to shape who we are and what we do. So to me, I would say that the key component, if I say one thing, is focus in strengthening the education of the next generation of our leaders and exposing them to what the future might look like and give them the tools.
Thank you. We have about 5 minutes for audience questions. And so I will respectfully say, if you have a comment that you would like Oris to hear, please talk to her after, so we can have these 5 minutes for questions. Anybody? I've dissuaded you all with that? Oh, there's one in the back. You can have this.
Et je ne sais pas si je peux poser ma question en français et qu'on va traduire pour moi.
I don't speak French. I would love to. I failed French, but if someone can explain.
Did anyone else have a question while we get the translation, and we'll come right back?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Je remercie Dr. Oris Sanjur pour cette belle présentation qui a été extrêmement édifiante. Et je voulais savoir quelles ont été les initiatives qu'a pris l'institution Smithsonian pour accompagner les communautés ou encore pour aller vers les communautés?
Thank you for the question. So the question is, what were the initiatives that we took to sort of help the community and join the community as we move forward? We did a couple of things. I'm sorry. It was, some of the initiatives and the question was, what were the initiatives that the institution took to help the community and join the community in this journey of change? First, we acknowledged that it was an issue. It's important. I mean, like you don't sweep that on the rug. Second is we put together internal groups, listening groups to listen to the community. We put together a survey. We work with individuals, set up resources like psychological resources for people who are, needed to have conversations if they had to. We went out publicly and had a very strong communication plan, so we monthly published what we were doing all the way from, because part of the issues, if we're talking about the harassment issues, had to do with physical safety, like some of the facilities needed to do restructuring, so put key locks and things like that, all the way to establish program for people to join. So those are the things that we did. A lot of listening, a lot of taking actions, and a lot of, being able to connect back to the principles. And I think a lot of empathy and love for the people, because it was hard, but transparency was very important. So when something like this happened, it rocks the boat very strongly. And then what we did was acknowledge that it happened and address the people who needed help the most, offer that help, put together a plan, communicate that plan, and they say we move forward. So it took time, and the first year was very hard. But we're in a moment that we're taking some steps to the community feel more comfortable. As a result of that, the institution has established an SI Civil Department that was established right in 2021. And that is institution-wide, not only First Try, that receive complaints associated with any kind of behavior or harassment issues, not only sexual harassment, which is good. Solidifying and strengthening internal mechanisms for presenting those complaints in a safe and confidential manner was another important aspect of what we did. So yes.
So we're going to take the last two questions. So if you'll ask your question, and then Arcelio will ask his question, and or you can answer them both together.
All right, hi, I'm Shamir from Jamaica. I'm also a biologist myself, so I was very inspired by your journey. I just want to know, how do you approach succession planning to ensure that future generation of scientists, especially leadership roles within the Smithsonian or just within the field itself?
Congratulations on all your achievements and really on the great presentation today as well. Smithsonian is a recognized, powerful institution within the United States, and it gets involved not just in study and in science, but it also gets involved obviously through its Department of Reckoning on Racial Past and stuff like that. It gets involved in social work within the United States. Being the only agency outside of the United States here in Panama, how does Smithsonian translate that into Panama's influence?
Absolutely. Thank you for both questions. So let's start with the first one about succession planning and ensuring that we have diversity in positions. I didn't get to talk about something that is very important, and is mentorship. It is important that for succession, you start with mentoring plans that are intentional. And when I say mentoring, it's not only how to, and it's a different way to educate, is what are the skills that people need to be able to reach to this position? Because let me tell you something, for those of you who are in top positions in organizations, you will recognize that you didn't get there just by chance, that you needed to develop skills to be able to manage people. Because no one taught you that. And I don't know, at least no one taught me that. So I had to recognize that that is important. So developing, making sure that in your succession plan, that you have a strong mentorship program, it's important. Recognizing the value and the skills of the people who are working with you, and then highlighting those values, strengthening the values to make sure that they can reach to higher positions in the organization is important. So you start building, if you have those capacities in your community and your group, build them, recognize them, give an opportunity for growth, mentor them. So when the opportunity comes, whether it's within the organization or outside organization, they can take advantage of those opportunities. Second question about striving the only unit of those Smithsonian outside the United States and how we handle with the cultural differences or the culture, how we embed ourselves. It has been a journey, I have to say. When we started, part of the reason of having that exhibition in DC and at MUSI when we had it, and the exhibition is still in DC, so those of you who are in the DC area can still go to the National Museum of Natural History, and there is still the BCI exhibition. Barrow Colorado Island is, it's where the whole story started about 100 years ago. And what happened then, it was a group of scientists, mostly men, who were interested in doing science. And women were allowed, but it was, they were less welcome, let's put it this way. So through the years, a couple of things had happened. STRI has moved outside the island. We actually have a lot more connection with Panama. Two, there has been a true recognition of the value of that connection between Panama and the institution. So culturally speaking, we have blended better. Three, we have given opportunities like myself to have a more broader and diverse community in the organization so we connect better. I'm an example of the many of our employees who are part of the Panamanian community, but also work at institutions, so we connect that way. And the colonialism is always something that is on the table that we are aware, so we are constantly checking and making sure that we engage locally. We're mostly a science institution, but we recognize that culturally speaking, we're embedded, and we continue to work in ways to connect and give back to the country. So we purposely, for example, have public programs that work with children from Panama, particularly with underrepresented communities, so they can share some of the, or be access to some of the information we have. And we actually also connect with teachers. We have teacher training programs. We connect with the scientific community. So we have a series of activities that we develop to be able to connect with Panama. And recognizing one thing I want to make public is the only reason that SRI and the Smithsonian is in Panama is thanks to the generosity of the Panamanian people. Always recognize that.
Sorry, those are all the questions that we have time for, but if you do see Oris in the hallway, not during the sessions because you'll all be focused on the presenters, but during the break time, if you see her, I'm sure she'll be happy to discuss more. So I just wanted to thank you again, Oris, for being here with us and always sharing so openly. And I will say, you know, despite the many hats that you wear, you are always an accessible and trusted colleague for those of us in Panama or in Washington, D.C. So if you can all, before I invite Shani and Elena to close, just give another round of applause and appreciation.
Thank you
for
so
our
much.
keynote.
Thank you.
We have just this small gift of appreciation on behalf of Max, so thank you.